Yeah, this is weird. I'm not gonna. I'm kind of considering like just taking down the Tyler videos. It's like the comments aren't. How can I say this? Like people are saying, "Oh, this is offensive. Why am I being recommended this? This is a bad look or whatever." Blah 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 blah. Like what the videos that I made before. Like here's the thing: I don't script my videos. I just kind of like go off the whim with my opinions, but my opinions have been formed from like my own research and from like lived experience and like things that I observed. So like when I initially made those videos, I was like, oh yeah, it's just something that I observed. Like might be useful to just say this coming from an American perspective, right? And then it like it kind of feels like there's this like cultural war happening where I guess people in South Africa think that they're gonna like change somebody's mind or that I'm gonna feel like, oh, what I said is offensive and so now I'm gonna take it back. Like I don't take it back. So I don't I'm not like revising what I said. Like I said what I said, I meant what I meant. That's what I said. That's how I feel. Anyway, but I kind of wanted to just say this because I do think that there's this idea that like cancellation or basically that if you disagree with someone, this idea of cancellation is supposed to encourage you to do something or not do something. Um, and I'm gonna just like I'm moving away from the Tyler conversation. I don't know what I'll do with those videos. It does seem like it's a useful space for a lot of people who are unpacking things around race to like be there and to like understand things. I'm like I'll leave the space open. It kind of feels like there's some useful conversation happening happening there, some community bonding. I do think there's a lot of Black Americans who have feelings about stuff and don't have the words for it. So that's why I thought it was useful to like jump into the conversation there just to kind of like give it space, especially when I see a lot of the video essayists who are coming from other spaces. Like having white commentators in this chat doesn't really make sense at all. It's just pointless. Especially when like Tyla is occupying a lot of Black American spaces right now. But either way, it was whatever. Like I think I am going to remove her from my musical window of the world, and I think it'll probably just be better that way. So anyway, moving forward, I do want to talk about this idea of cancellation though, and this idea of like you not agreeing politically with someone and then therefore there's this idea that like you can't exist now. And I actually think that this is what's going on in college campuses, and I was talking about this today and I want to like retell this story. I've kind of told it before, and I'll actually there's a video I made before. You can go watch that video to get an idea for yourself of like, how do you say, like what it means. Okay, so I am a product of public schools, good public schools, but public schools nonetheless. And this is by choice. I definitely had an opportunity to go to smaller private institutions growing up, but for reasons that have to do with like my interest in art or like my interest in other things, I chose to go to public schools. This was also a large part of like why I was initially going to go to this like private school in Long Island called Hofstra. But instead, I went to the University of California, Davis. It's a much different experience, right? I think that even though maybe in terms of size, the schools are similar, but in terms of, I think, politics, community, all of that stuff is actually way different. And so when I first got into sort of like a career path, it became evident that like my experience as a UC student was like really specific. And it was also very different from one of my closest friends who had gone to the University of Idaho, and then another at the time, one of my colleagues, I'll call her now, but who went to Yale. And so we were like doing this like compare and contrast sort of situation where we were talking about our experiences and like how and why they were different. And it's something I just really want to like highlight because like damn, like that shit makes a difference. And here's the thing. People who typically go to like state schools, like the UC schools, the UCs are very, they still have a lot of research funding, but usually the state schools are kind of like they're like the middle class sanctuaries. Like you just go to the state school to like remain middle class, and that's like the big idea. People who go to like the Ivy League schools though are, and they're not going for like a sport, or even if they are going for a sport, they're trying to be like the upper class, like the elite, and that's like a much different experience. It's a much different experience. I'm not saying I'm not saying it in terms of it being bad or good. I'm just saying it's different. It's different. And I think that that's useful to highlight. And the reason that I think it's useful to highlight is because the reason that I think it's useful to highlight the purpose of the Ivy League schools. And when I'm talking about I'll put like a little link, just like what Ivy League schools are, because I do think there might be some people here who aren't familiar with what, I think there's like 9 of them. I think they have to do with like the pack or something about sports teams and how good the sports teams are. But typically also the schools have very large endowments, meaning like rich people give money to the schools so that the school's legacy can continue, which therefore funds really great academic programs. So it's kind of like down the line, like when rich people give money, then academia can go further and further and further. Now this is the big idea at like a Harvard and Yale per se, which are supposed to be like places where like the smartest of the smart can go and can thrive, right? Now the reason that something like that space is important, especially for people who really are smart but possibly poor, is because you can actually have how do you say it, like a path toward meeting people who are not in the social class that you have direct access to, and that is an actual privilege that is worth exploring. But what's happening now, and this is something that's very strange that I think we should give note to and give space to. So students who were participating in the Palestinian protests, who were like pro Palestine basically, are being they're not being targeted, basically. They were filmed, okay, on camera, and their pictures were placed on a bus that rode around the campus. And I think they also made an entire projector screen and put it like a poster on the campus so that everyone knows, like, don't hire these people. These are the people with these particular radical ideas. And I think that, like, to me, this says a lot. And then, so what happened after that is there are some really rich investors. Like, I feel like the names are like Bill Ackman is one, and there's like some other people. Anyway, so what they did is they said, we're going to take away money from the school because you guys continue to like support this like anti-Israeli like rhetoric. Now, I do think that there's some students who have been like completely extreme and kind of like anti-Jewish, but I do think that there are just some people who see the humanitarian crisis happening in Palestine and are way more concerned about that than they are about the Jewish lives that are lost, because there are fewer Jewish lives that were lost in this particular kind of incident. Now, there's a bigger picture here politically about Israel that I feel like I understand. There's just like less Jewish people on planet Earth, and then there are like Arab people, and so like there's a need to protect Jewish interests in that case, and that's a complex issue to like unpack. That's hard. That's difficult. But also, um, the students who, however they're feeling right now, and whatever they said, I do think it might be useful to, how do you say it? Like, separate these students and like intervene in some way. Like, there needs to be ways for these students to talk out their aggression or their strong feelings about what's happening in Palestine, which it does seem like they're able to have protests, they can hold signs, they can do all of these things, and that's great. That's great. I support that. But these students also should be able to participate in our democracy, in our capitalist society, and like earn money. So I saw some things were happening where like there was a Muslim woman whose job offer was rescinded because at a law, she's like a law student or a lawyer, and her offer to join a law firm was rescinded because of her views in relation to Palestine. That is a form of employment discrimination. Like, you literally can't discriminate against someone based on their religious preference or their political preference. That's employment discrimination. So, and then one thing that just seems very strange right now is I think that some people are unaware of how homogenous the groups that have the power and money in America and really in a lot of different places are. So, like, all around the Middle East, the people who have the power and the money are Arab and they're Muslim. That's the reason why so many people are focused on Israel. It's the only place that is not majority Arab and not majority Muslim in the entire Middle East. Otherwise, that entire space is homogenous, and there are billions of Arab Muslim people on the planet. If you don't see how that could be like a real problem just for like Western civilization and like our freedom to have, if you have not been watching what's happening to the rest of the world amongst like Arab Muslim rule, then you should wake the fuck up, because like it certainly is not like peace in the Middle East. It is like terror. Okay. You can talk about like Tel Aviv and Dubai or whatever, but have you heard the stories of like the women who were flown out to Dubai and got pooped on, raped? They were like eating shit pies or something. The stories are crazy. Like, I think the moral of the story is like everybody hates women, but also Arab men hate women. I don't know if I actually told this story on this channel before, but I'm not saying I hang out with neo-Nazis. Like, I don't. But I was like hanging out with this like German guy. He's not a Nazi. That's not the thing. But it was very funny because he's just extremely, he looks sort of Nazi-ish. He wasn't bald, but he was like very tall, very German. And he was telling me a story about how he was in, I think he was in like Saudi Arabia on like a work trip or something, and he was hanging out with a friend, and then they met like a local there who invited them to like a house party. But then it ended up being like this gay house party, and they were like trying to convince them to join like their little like, I guess it was like a weird, it was like 9 dudes in like a house, and then they were like not supposed to like have alcohol in that whole community, but they had beer or something, and then it turned to like beer, and then people started taking off their pants, and he was like, I have to figure out a way to get the fuck up out of here. And so like they ended up like finding a way to like leave this house party. That was in like Saudi Arabia, which is like this, it's supposed to be like really like Muslim and religious, and I just think there's a lot of propaganda around like the Middle East and like the how do you say it, the inhibition or the unwillingness of the entire community to accept gayness as a real part of society has suppressed it in this way that people are just wilding, and that always happens. It's like they I don't know. Anyway, that isn't the point though. The point is like there, I was actually going to make another point about this. When you have only one frame of thought or only one like group of people that like homogeny in a space, especially on like university campuses, especially in somewhere like America, it's a problem. It's a real problem. And I don't think that that's a good thing. And I don't think that we're going, I don't even want to say we, because I don't really have a stake in the game. I feel like my stake in the game was like I tried to play the card of like public education works. And I played that card very moderately, as in like I just kept showing up spaces, being the best that I could, you know. I definitely gave 50%, okay? And like I'm sorry, but given that there was nobody else, 50% should have been fucking good enough. And if it ain't, then I'm taking my card back. And the sad part about it is, like, you've seen the others. Like, who's the competition? Like, Krishan. Okay, if the competition's like Yara Shahidi, like, okay, fine, let her like, she should definitely have her things. Like, she definitely deserves. But also, like, there would have to be like, if she's an A, then I'm still saying I think that I'm a B, and B students get something too. Because if B students don't get anything, then America is not a thing. And people don't know how to deal with like black B students. Like, we can read. I'm serious about that. You can't read. So that's a fucking thing that you have to just be serious about. Anyway, I was going somewhere else with this, but then I forgot. Oh, so I was talking actually about. Well, you can go listen to this for yourself, but there was, you know, the student that I knew who went to Yale didn't like her experience at all, and it seems like there's like a population of students there who are like descendants of like slave owners. So there's not that there's like a culture around slavery, but it seemed like it was like a running joke on the campus or something that like, oh, we have money, our families have money from slavery. You know, like if your dad, isn't it in like the Mean Girls movie where the one girl, Gretchen, like her dad's invented toaster strudel, so like that's her story, like, oh yes, you know, like my father is the inventor of toaster strudel. On that campus, their parents were the inventors and inheritors of plantation slavery money, and so like a lot of people like own plantations and they still live on plantations. um that there's nothing funny about that. That's just pretty shitty, okay? It's pretty fucked up. It's pretty fucked up. I don't know. That's the like that ain't funny. That's I don't know. Anyway, so I just kind of wanted to say that very quickly, just about like cancellation, and then I would say like not diversity in like social class, but diversity in experience. And I'll do a little bit of work today to write about this in a little bit more depth, just so it might make a little bit more sense, the point that I'm trying to get at. And I'll come back and revisit this topic later on in the day.